Good morning, friends. Make yourselves at ease, not the kind of ease that sinks into sleep, but that bright, receptive quiet in which we hear what isn't said and see what can't be drawn on a chalkboard. Yes, I see the red light on the recorder. Leave it there. We have learned something in these years that you do not merely get words on tape, but you catch the consciousness as well. And our work is the transmission of a consciousness, not a syllabus. Those who hear later will join us now. This electronic work somehow carries the atmosphere of prayer, the hush behind the phrasing. Reading is good. Hearing with the heart is better. And the combination, well, it has made more progress in 6 months than some of us struggled for in 6 years. Let us set our theme plainly and without apology, so that if you wish to argue with me, you will know exactly where to put your finger. Stop projecting at people. Realize God, then watch. That is the whole of what we shall do in this hour and in the hours that follow. I am not here to scold Neville, or anyone who has helped you believe that life can be kinder than your fears suggest. I have enjoyed, as you have, the stories of a parking space smiling at you just when you arrive. If that soothed your heart for a day, be grateful. Our inquiry is deeper and more generous. What is it that actually heals? What is it that fulfills? Not in episodes, not as a trick at the edges of life, but as the nature of life itself. I say to you, after my years of work, yes, more than 27 years sitting with the sick, the distraught, the prosperous but empty, and the child with a fever, that outcomes arrived where mental effort ceased. Not when we strained the mind to hold a picture steady, not when we sent vibratory postcards to reluctant relatives and stubborn bosses, but when the mind became still, when thought dropped from the branch like a ripe fruit, and presence announced itself as the only fact. Be still and know that I am God. Not think God, not push God, not dramatize God. No. When thinking stops, real power begins. Now, I will ask for your friendliness as we approach this, because we were trained in a world of cause and effect. We were born under the law, not under grace. We learned to bargain with the law, to manage outcomes, to study techniques the way a chess player studies the board. If I do this, that will happen. And then someone said, add visualization to the move. And it felt modern. But listen, law, however polished, remains law. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Grace is not another better law. You do not change one law for another. You end the bargaining altogether and discover a realm already whole, already here, already sufficiency itself. This is why I am asking you to stop projecting at people. Because projection, however polite, is a form of manipulation. You and I know the feeling of being the target of someone's good intentions. They hold us in an image and call it love. No, friends, love is not an image one mind pushes into another. Love is presence realized. And in that realized presence, the image falls away like mist before the sun, and the person stands revealed as they are in God. It isn't that your thinking is bad or that your picturing is wicked. Don't put yourself under that lash. It's that mind is in power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. And because this is so, our medium matters. Hearing, as we are doing, is not merely catching syllables and phrasing. It is the receiving of a tone, the undercurrent of rest. There are letters on my desk from students who say, when I play the tape, the same silence that came in the room that day arrives in my kitchen. And then they add, when the silence came, the headache lifted, or the child stopped weeping. It wasn't that a clever sentence healed. It was that the presence behind the words made itself felt. You see, the tape catches the consciousness, and the consciousness carries the work. I smile when someone says, but the microphone crackled. Let it crackle. If you can hear through the crackle to the presence that holds your life. If you want to argue, do. This classroom is for grown souls. Ask me whether I have ever seen visualization work. I will tell you, I have seen it arrange matters very neatly, and I have seen those very arrangements dissolve like houses built on sand. Ask whether realization is practical. I will tell you, I have sat in total quiet with a widow whose bank book taught arithmetic but not grace, and in the hush there came not a plan but a presence, and afterward the supply arrived from routes no strategist could have charted. Ask me for a principle, and I shall give it to you bluntly. Realization of the presence of God is fulfillment, not a prelude to fulfillment, not a lever by which you pry down things from the shelf. Fulfillment itself. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, to give no bargaining, to give no projection necessary, to give no vigilant maintenance of a mental picture, as if the universe were a skittish pony that will bolt unless you hold the reins tight. Do you see the humor of our efforts? A student told me he projected to have a certain gentleman telephone him by noon, and sure enough the telephone rang, but it was the man's secretary reminding him that he had promised to call somebody else. We smile because we recognize ourselves. Then, gently, we put away childish things. This morning, then, we agree on this foundation. We are moving from projecting outcomes to realizing presence. We are not trying to get, we are consenting to be. We are not asking mind to do what it cannot do. We are letting grace be what it always is. And in this consent, we do something astonishingly undramatic. We become still. We listen until the sound behind the words is heard. We receive until the very air seems to have a weight, a sweetness, a hush. And then we watch, not passively, not lazily, but alertly, like sentries at the gate of a kingdom that needs no defending, only acknowledging. Do not be afraid of what will be asked of you. Not another technique, not another strain of the forehead, not another posture to master, only this. Lay down the projection, realize God, and watch. Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. If that offends the industrious part of you that likes to manage, let it be offended for a day and see if it does not thank you tomorrow. For now, feel the presence that is here, as surely as you hear my voice through this imperfect machinery. Feel it. And let the mind do what it rarely allows itself to do. Pause. In that pause, the argument loses interest in itself. The fear forgets its lines, and someone takes the stage. And that, dear friends, is where the healing and the fulfillment begin. Now let us lay the two roads side by side so plainly that no one need stumble on the signage. On the first road, visualization, we take the mind as an instrument to sketch a picture, money arriving, a diagnosis reversed, a certain person turning in a certain way, and then we hold that picture as if effort were glue, and the universe a reluctant envelope we are trying to seal. That is not wicked, it is sincere. It is also wearying. Visualization assumes, tacitly, that mind is a force over matter, that if we intensify the image enough, the clay of circumstance will consent to our fingerprints. It says, if I can see it clearly, I can get it. And because law will always return like for like, sometimes you do get an echo of your picture, just as sometimes a shout bounces neatly off a canyon wall. But a canyon's echo is not a conversation, and an echo will not hear you when you weep at midnight. On the second road, realization, we do not pencil in sketches upon the fabric of life. We recognize what already is. God is here now. We do not send an image out to collect our good. We stand still and meet the presence that is good itself. Then, without pressure, without bargaining, fulfillment appears the way dawn appears when no one cranks the sun. In him we live and move and have our being. Not in our pictures, not in our efforts, in him and being. Realized, fulfills. Let me be as downright as an old friend who loves you enough to disagree. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. The belief that mind can engineer the kingdom puts you on the payroll of the law, and the law is a harsh employer. Do more. Think harder. Hold the pose. Don't let the vision blur. Then, when a result does not match your postcard, the law adds a surcharge called blame. You didn't visualize quite right. You let a contrary thought in. That is how we became watchmen over our own thoughts, and very nervous watchmen at that. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Grace is not a final law. Grace is the end of bargaining. If you doubt me, try a simple experiment. Hold in mind the exact color of the car you fancy, the model, the year, the chirp of the lock when you touch the fob. Do it for a week. Two things may happen. One, your neighbor will buy it, and you will spend a month deciding whether that is your demonstration or his. Two, you will get it and discover that the payment plan was hiding under the seat. We laugh because we have done it. But shift 1 inch, 1 soul inch from the getting to the realizing, and you will seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and you will discover the remainder of the verse is a law of grace. And all these things shall be added unto you. Added without your pushing them from behind. Visualization lives on the horizontal. Cause and effect. My thought and its result. My image and its hoped-for print. Realization opens the vertical, the awareness of God as the living context in which all appears. When the vertical is felt, the horizontal arranges itself as if by consent, which it is the consent of grace. That is why I say, not to startle you, but to free you, that the turning point in our work is not stronger thought. It is the end of thought. When thinking stops, real power begins. Not an aimless stupor, not a sleepy drift, but that alert stillness in which you can almost hear the wordless benediction, peace, be still. And the waves of argument stop acting like they are in charge. But does realization do anything? If by do, we mean push, pull, negotiate, cajole, no. Realization reveals, the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. When presence is realized, the works appear as finished forms of what already is in God. It is as if you walk into a dark room where a feast is laid and fret that the table is empty, and then someone lifts the blind and you sigh, oh, it was here. It is finished, not because you manipulated it, but because grace completed it before you asked. In that light, the appetite, the supply, and the right companions to share it all meet without you seating the guests by mental place cards. Now, if you have learned to extract some effect by visualization, do not feel scolded. Take the comfort it gave and let it graduate. Visualization tries to get, realization consents to be. Visualization collects fragments. Realization abides wholeness. Visualization is the flashlight. Batteries always threatening to fail. Realization is sunrise. And you will soon learn the peculiar hilarity of law. Hold a picture of a telephone call, and you may induce a ring, yes, and then discover you have won a warranty renewal on a blender you do not own. Grace, by contrast, is not accidental. It is lawful in a higher way. It is God being God as your affairs without your pretending to be God's stage manager. This is not to say you will never think again. Of course you will think. You will write checks and tie shoes and choose ripe fruit. But in matters that matter, our practice is to think until the honest end of thought, and then to stop at the sea line where the human gives way to the infinite. It is there, in the pause, that the rearrangement you crave begins without your hand on a single lever. A child's fever softens, not because you hurled an image at it, but because you abided the presence that knows no fever. A stubborn scarcity loosens, not because you pasted wealth words over lack, but because you felt the substance of life itself, and the forms arrived shyly to meet it. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. The kingdom is not a picture. The kingdom is presence. Let me leave you for this moment with a practice that matches this road. When a desire rises, do not paint it. Name it, yes, to clear the fog, health, supply, companionship, and then put down the brush and turn inward with the gentlest of questions. Father, art thou here? Do not answer. Wait. Do not calculate. Wait. In 2 minutes or 20, the air will thicken with a sweetness you did not make, and you will know not believe. Know, lo, I am with you always. That is realization. And from that knowing, watch. You will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, and you will not be tired from having pushed it into place. If we are to be honest craftsmen in this life of the Spirit, we ought to know the tools that brought us to the present moment, and where each one serves and where it fails. How did we arrive at this business of drawing pictures in the head and calling it prayer? Let us take a quiet walk along the river of non-medical healing, and you will see with your own eyes where the stream bends toward God and where it loops back upon itself into more mind, more method, more law. Non-medical healing, as far as our modern record goes, had its respectable beginning in hypnotism. Mesmer discovered that one consciousness could influence another, and that emotions and pains could be rearranged by the pressure of a stronger mind. Animal magnetism, they called it. And if that name makes you smile, remember, it worked often enough to make the name famous. But what was it? One will imposing upon another. A superior suggestion, dislodging an inferior one. Cause and effect. Law. The patient walked away relieved, and sometimes returned bound to the practitioner, like a vine to a trellis that is not the sun. Then came Mr. Quimby, a remarkable observer, who began within hypnotism, and by honest experiment, inferred that belief itself was the culprit. If a suggestion can move the pain must be belief, he reasoned. Thus was born mental therapeutics, no longer pure mesmerism, but still within the precincts of mind. Identify the wrong belief, replace it with the right one, strengthen the replacement by quiet insistence. Many were helped. I honor that. But what was happening? Thought forms were being moved about the stage. The script was being edited. The stage, the script, and the editor all remained under law. A clergyman, Dr. Evans, gave mental healing a pulpit and a pen. He wrote of disease as the outpicturing of fear, anger, resentment. He printed the early lists. This organ is the victim of that thought. This emotion breeds that lesion. And he made a dignified science of reforming belief. For all the help it brought, it also raised a very heavy child, self-surveillance. Am I thinking the wrong thought? Is there a contrary belief lurking behind that curtain? You know, the fatigue of such watchfulness, the mind trying to engineer its own salvation, became its own policeman, and too often its own prison. Now, Mrs. Eddy enters, and here the river meets a mountain. She had known Mr. Quimby's work. She stood in the current of mental therapeutics, but she looked up and glimpsed, in a flash that altered her life, that healing is not the clever manipulation of thought, but the revealing of a presence, Christ, the incorporeal truth. When she stood in that altitude, healings appeared that no mere suggestion could explain. I am the Lord that healeth thee, not I, the mind that edits thee. The trouble, oh, and you can hear the contrarian in me smiling gently. The trouble is that movements grow, and when they grow, they codify. And when they codify, they often return to law. Students pressed for rules, and rules were given. Mortal mind was to be denied categorically, and the denials became a new technique. Where the founder touched grace, the followers often reached for a formula. Yet in those moments, and there were many, when consciousness rose to the Christly realization, grace performed what no mental pressure ever can. From there, the stream broadened into what we now call new thought. The teachings spread like good spring weather, affirmations, denials, visualizations, beautiful moralities about optimism and kindness, and unity's kindly sanctuary where many have rested. If you have been held there, be grateful. I am. But let us be plain so our feet may be sure. At no time has that movement as a movement possessed the secret of healing. What secret? Grace. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. The majority of New Thought remains a shop of finely made tools for rearranging thought within law. Affirm here, deny there, picture this, insist on that. Useful? Yes. Redeeming? No. It rearranges the furniture. It does not open the windows to the sun. Do you see now why techniques plateau? Mental science refines control, and there is always another refinement to master, another contrary thought to flush out of the bushes, another affirmation to repeat until your jaw is tired. Control breeds more control, and along with it, more anxiety. Did I do it right? Did I let in the negative? Under the law of cause and effect, this scrupulosity is a virtue. Under grace, it is an insult. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Liberty from what? From the negotiation itself. You do not change one law for a more respectful law. You do not lift a heavier barbell with stronger thought. You annihilate the whole legalist posture by realizing presence. And in that realization, redemption appears. Guilt dissolves, fear melts, pain has no footing, because the premise separation has been erased by love itself. I say to you, after my years of work and watching, mind isn't power, spirit is power, soul is power, consciousness is power, truth is power. Hypnotism in a necktie is still hypnotism. Mental suggestion set to a hymn tune is still suggestion. Without grace, all that polish becomes respectable mesmerism. It can make you feel better about the cell you sleep in. It cannot break the door. The inmate may hang prettier pictures by visualization, may even feel a cross breeze of optimism through affirmations, but the wall stands until grace felt, realized, welcomed renders the wall a lie, and you walk out, not by force, but because the door was never locked in God. Permit a story. A businessman came to me with a back so tense you could have bounced a coin off it. He had affirmed away the pain into a numbness, then denied the numbness into a twitch. He had visualized vertebrae like ivory chessmen sitting obediently in a row. He was sincere. He was exhausted. We sat, and I asked him not for one more thought, but for less. Be still and know that I am God. We waded into a quiet, so alive it felt like air with body. In that presence, without a single command exchanged, the back let go, as if it had heard its real name. Not because we mastered a technique, but because grace had ended the argument. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. So, as we honor the lineage, Mesmer's discovery that consciousness affects, Quimby's leap from force to belief, Dr. Evans's respectable therapeutics, Mrs. Eddie's mountain glimpse of Christ, and the broad, humane plains of new thought and unity, let us not mistake the stream for the ocean. Visualization belongs to the mental branch. It will move thought forms. It will pinch and tuck the garments of experience. It will bargain with law. It cannot dissolve the root, because the root is the belief that law is the master. Grace is the master. And grace does not argue with law. It renders it inoperative by fulfilling reality where no bargaining is possible. No man can serve two masters. Choose then. If you choose grace, you will not need to retire your mind from writing checks or tying shoes. You will retire it from playing God. You will enter the holy quiet where thinking ceases and power, real power, begins, and you will find that redemption, not rearrangement, is the nature of the kingdom your Father has always been pleased to give. Now, let us be very gentle and very exact with ourselves. We were born under the law, not under grace. That is not a scold. It is a diagnosis. We opened our eyes in a world run on cause and effect, reward and punishment. Self-preservation is the household rule. If you do this, you get that. If you fail to do this, you forfeit that. The milk arrived if the coin was in the slot. The teacher's smile arrived if the homework was correct. Even our very breath seemed to be guarded by a vigilant watchman named because. And so the heart learned its arithmetic. Sow and reap, obey and be safe, disobey and be sorry. Under such a curriculum, it is no wonder we tried to make of prayer a more refined arithmetic. Visualization entered the school and propped a new slate on the same old wall. Do you see what happens? Visualization is cause and effect with a halo. It says, if I think firmly enough, if I picture brightly enough, the effect will oblige. It multiplies the negotiations instead of ending them. More affirmations, more images, more caution against the stray shadow, more fear of missing the mark, as if God were a wily umpire waiting to call out if your mental foot slips off the base for a second. The heart, already tired from the day's bargaining, now must bargain at midnight with its own thought life. We call that prayer. It is bookkeeping. As many as are of the works of the law are under the curse, Scripture says. What curse? The curse of vigilance without rest, of a yoke that grows heavier however noble your intentions. I have watched good souls wear out their shoe leather, pacing the halls of cause and effect, telling themselves that their metaphysics is faith, when in fact it is a contract sign here, repeat here, focus here, And perhaps the universe will send a package. When the package comes, they dare not exhale in relief, for now a new clause has been added. Keep thinking it, or you will lose it. Do you see? Under law, every win carries a rider that says, more watchfulness, please. I have known men whose bank balances made a tidy boast of their visualization, and I have watched those same men sleep with their eyelids half open, guarding the very treasure they claim the universe gladly bestowed. My yoke is easy, and my burden is light, said the master. Law says, my yoke is adjustable, tighten it when the market turns. And then the cruelest part. Personal blame creeps in under the skirting board and sits on the edge of your bed. If a result delays, the patient is faulted. You entertained a contrary thought. You allowed fear in. You attracted it. The one who came for mercy leaves with homework and a frown. It isn't your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble. I have had to say to more than one trembling heart, but under law, wrong thinking is the debt collector's favorite song. You can hear it down the street before he knocks. Let me make you smile at ourselves so we may be kinder. A mother once told me, in honest tears, that she sat beside her child's bed, counting affirmations, the way she used to count stitches when knitting 50 denials for the fever, 50 affirmations for the health, and if the fever did not ease, she assumed she had dropped a stitch in her mind and had to unravel and begin again. That is law, precious in intent and punishing in practice. The child did not need a mental sweater. He needed the warmth of presence. But under law, we do not trust warmth. We trust rules. And then we accuse ourselves for misapplying them. Under the law of cause and effect, even our kindness bulks up like a weightlifter. Be positive, be grateful, be radiant. We exhort, and then we keep one eye on the mirror to see whether the muscles are showing. A bouquet arrives on your desk, lovely, and you suspect that yesterday's gratitude did the trick. Then a bill arrives larger than the bouquet, and you rush for a brighter gratitude, as if God must be sweetened to perform. Friends, this is wearying, because it is foreign to the soul. The letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. The letter is the scorecard of your mental performance. The spirit is life realized without your scoring it. Do not misunderstand me. I am not sneering at effort. I am revealing the engine under the hood. Visualization, as commonly practiced, tightens the nut of control one more turn. It says, I can manage reality with a well-burnished thought, and then it puts a guard at every door of the mind to check for contraband fear. It is sincerity in a soldier's uniform, and when it works, it confirms the soldier in his post. Do more of that, says the sergeant. Keep the image sharper. But we were not built for permanent sentry duty at the gates of our own skulls. You will grow thin in the soul, even as the outer arrangements fatten. Listen again, and hear in it not condemnation but diagnosis. We were born under the law, not under grace. We learned to live by the Mosaic ledger, right on one side, wrong on the other, and our metaphysical tricks became better ledgers. The trouble with ledgers is that they never close. There is always another column, another footnote, another discrepancy to reconcile. So the patient is asked, what did you think? As if the universe were a balance sheet jittering because of one mislaid penny. And if the ledger balances, oh, the short-lived celebration, the pen must not be put down, for the next transaction is already pacing. This is what I mean when I say that wins compound vigilance. You purchased an island of relief with mental coin, and now you must hire guards to patrol its shores. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. The mind, under law, may bully an effect for a season and call it demonstration, but the bill comes due in sleeplessness, in blame, in the subtle fear that one lapse will snatch away the gain. Fear hath torment, and torment is the secret tax that mental control pays to its landlord. If you have wondered why, after all your successes, a thin thread of unease runs through the tapestry, this is why. There is a negotiation humming behind the wall, and the heart hears it even when the house looks quiet. We are not yet leaping to the remedy. That is next, and it will be sweet. For now, let us see the ailment without embroidery. Visualization, when it becomes our way of life, keeps us bargaining with law. It increases vigilance and blame rather than bringing freedom. It makes us treasurers of a fund that must never dip below a line, rather than sons and daughters of a household where it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Born under law, we became accountants of our own light. No wonder the lamp flickers. Soon, we shall set down the ledger. For the moment, acknowledge it for what it is, a heavy book, and be willing, in your heart, to consider that the one who said, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," did not mean a rest you must maintain with a stopwatch, but a rest that maintains you. Now comes the beautiful interruption. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Not a better law, not a finer pencil with which to balance the books another realm. If you will hear it, if you will let it come in where the bargaining has worn your soul thin, this is the word that changes the furniture of the inner temple. You do not change one law for another. You annihilate the whole of law as the governing principle of your being, and you bring grace. We were trained to add columns. Grace erases the board and writes one word on the clean slate: presence. Do you see what this means? It means the end of negotiation. It means you are released from winning the universe by correct moves. It means the covenant is not your accuracy. The covenant is God. For this is the covenant that I will make. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts. Not the ledger's law, love's law. No bargains, no clauses, no late fees. The bargaining ends because the bargainer has appeared, not as a stern auditor, but as a living presence at the center of your being, so near that you do not have to call across any distance to be heard. And with that appearing, law folds like a paper tent at dawn, not because you argued with it, but because another light has made tents unnecessary. Grace is not a theory you believe more vigorously than yesterday. It is not a brighter affirmation or a cleaner denial. Realization is not a thought about God. It is the felt aliveness of God here. I am speaking of that immediate, soft thunder that fills the room without sound, the quickening that needs no vocabulary, the hush that has body to it. Be still and know that I am God. When thinking stops, real power begins, not vacancy, not drowsiness, but the still electricity of presence. In that awareness, fear thins like fog in sun. The tight weave of cause and effect simply has nothing to grip. The law says, if this, then that. Grace says, I am. That one utterance dissolves the entire syllogism. Mind is in power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. Under law, the mind plays foreman, barking orders that matter. Under grace, the mind takes off its whistle and sits down because the master has entered the room. Then the works appear not as conquered territory, but as the native landscape of God realized. Health returns, not as a negotiated settlement, but as the fact of wholeness, where wholeness alone is possible. Supply appears not as a trophy hauled back from battle, but as the substance of life shedding its forms the way a tree sheds fruit, because it is its nature to give. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. When presence is realized, the giving is here, and the things, whatever they may be, are what Scripture promised. Added, I want you to feel the mercy in this. The realization of the presence of God is fulfillment, not the preface to fulfillment. Fulfillment. When that presence is tangible, supply ceases to be a target. It becomes a byproduct. Health ceases to be a campaign. It becomes the way life shows itself when unopposed by fear. The right place and right activity cease to be prizes for the diligent visualizer. They become natural stations on a track you are already on because being put you there. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. The adding is the easiest part. It is our seeking that has been noisy. Grace quiets it. You will no more be guilty of trying to demonstrate supply than you would of stealing it once you have tasted this. Why? Because to try to demonstrate a thing is to confess that you haven't found the giver, and that is theft from your own soul. To manipulate a person, to engineer a position, even to reach for a parking space with your mind. Forgive the little grin. My posture on parking spaces is to slip back under the overseer of law, to tell yourself that the infinite requires your push. It does not. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. When the worker is recognized at work, you can afford to keep your hands off the levers you were never meant to pull and watch the scene arrange itself by a wisdom that never made a mistake. You say, but won't I be irresponsible if I stop managing outcomes? No, you will be faithful for the first time. Under law, you were a very busy actor in a drama you hoped would please the critics. Under grace, you become a witness to a finished work. It is finished. Not finished because you maneuvered the last inch into place, but finished because God is God. So you rise in the morning not to tame the day, but to meet it in communion. Lo, I am with you always. And if you meet always, you find that the particulars of the day have already consented to order themselves around that presence. That is why I say with all the gentle contrariness I can muster, stop targeting, realize, then watch. There is a little humor in this, if you will permit it. The law is like a diligent clerk who knocks on your door with time cards and says, we must account for everything. Grace retires the clerk with a pension and throws the doors open to a feast you did not cater. The clerk is indignant for a day or two, and your habits of vigilance may drum their fingers on the tabletop. Are you sure we shouldn't make a few calls to Providence? But stay in the presence, and you will see how swiftly the clatter subsides. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. My cup runneth over. The enemies, if you look closely, were never people or conditions. They were the old cause and effect anxieties, now politely shown to the door by Love himself. Let this be plain, so your practice may be simple. Grace ends the entire negotiation with law, not by wrangling a better deal, not by inserting your favorite clauses, but by removing the table and the contract and introducing you to the king. In that introduction, the soul breathes as it has longed to breathe. The ledger shuts by its own weight. The mind bows and becomes a servant instead of a tyrant. And you, who have paced your nights with duties and pictures and earnest schemes, will discover the happy scandal of the gospel. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. The kingdom is not a prize for good visualizers. It is presence realized. Stand there, quietly. Do not think. No. Do not bargain. Behold. And in the holy ease that follows, watch how life, relieved of your pushing, reveals itself as the grace it has always been. Now, if grace has entered the room and retired the clerk, let us extend that mercy to the way we look at one another. I say to you, after my years of work, and I say it so you can breathe again, it isn't your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble. The sentence has frightened the generation. Your thought did this, and it has left tender souls kneeling before a judge who does not exist. Under law, fault-finding seems both necessary and tidy. Under grace, fault is a missing word. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus. If condemnation remains in the room, Christ has not yet been recognized there. What then are we seeing when discord appears? Not the misdemeanors of my private mind, but the impersonal weather of universal belief, fear, contagion, herd suggestion, the ancient drumbeat of self-preservation that says, guard your life, for you are separated from its source. Do not pin a weather report on a person's lapel. Treat it as weather. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, said the apostle, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. Those rulers are not people. They are claims ancestral, collective, impersonal. When the claim storms in, our help is not to accuse the face before us, but to recognize the lie before God. You remember the disciples pointing at the blind man, eager to file a report. Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And the Christly answer cleared the docket. Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. There is your pattern. We turn from personal bookkeeping to presence, and we let the case dissolve in the light where it cannot stand. In practical terms, the healer's stance is this: refuse the bait of personality. Refuse the sweet temptation to become an amateur psychiatrist for the soul, and handle it as a universal claim, not a personal one. Name it if you must: influenza as the mass belief in contagion, poverty as the tribal fear of lack, strife as the old worship of self-preservation, and then, under grace, reduce it to its native nothingness, not by argument, by presence realized. It is a holy courtesy, and it is also ethical protection. We must not attribute guilt to those who suffer, and especially not to the innocent children whose very tears call upon our better angels. A fever on a child's brow is not the child's metaphysics misfiring. It is the universal claim of contagion presenting itself for dismissal. Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, the Master said. He did not add, after you have corrected their thought. Bring them to presence. I remember a small boy brought to me, cheeks like coals, the mother already bruised with the story that she had let in a negative. We would not have that in the room. We sat in quiet. We recognized no culprit but the world's long superstition in a power apart from God. We let thought run until it fell silent. Be still and know that I am God. And in that hush, the fever unwound like a watch whose mainspring had broken. Grace, not blame, did the work. Now and then, some of you, with the best intentions, go fishing in your memory for the sin that caused today's trouble, as if hauling in a confession would placate the sea. Do not do it. You will catch your own hat and think it a whale. The moment a person becomes your quarry, you have slipped back under law, and the quarry will multiply. We are not detectives. We are witnesses. The only admissible evidence is the presence itself. And in the court of that presence, the prosecution has nothing to say. How, then, do we help? We listen to the surface complaint, yes, to respect the human. Then we quietly set aside the personal ledger. We acknowledge the universal claim pressing for notice, fear, contagion, chance, self-preservation, the fantasy of separation, and we deny it any place, not by shouting it down, but by letting the felt I am crowd it out. The mind wants a technique. Grace wants an opening. Thought may sketch the principle for a moment. Then let it stop. When thinking stops, real power begins. In that living stillness, you will often feel the change before it appears, a soft lift, a warmth, a released breath, and then the outward form consents. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. I repeat this to guard you. Nobody is suffering from their own sins in the way the moral bookkeeper imagines. They may be suffering under the universal claim of sin, the suggestion of a self apart from God acting out its panic, but that is an atmosphere to be dispelled, not a person to be corrected. Even where there is behavior to be straightened, we work first at altitude. We behold the Christ where the actor stands, and we let that beholding do its own surgery. Judge not, that ye be not judged. Do you see the grace in that? When you decline to judge, you step out of the courtroom where reciprocal judgments bind both judge and prisoner. You enter the sanctuary where only love has jurisdiction. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. And truth, when realized, absolves before it adjusts, loves before it lifts, beholds before it blesses. Effective help turns from personal fault-finding to impersonal claims and yields them to grace. That is why our language in this work is gentle. We do not accuse. We announce. We announce the fact of God here, and we let the announcing be so real that the shadows forget how to be shadows. Then, without a single wagging finger, the patient discovers what Scripture has been whispering all along. Thy gentleness hath made me great. Now, because theory without practice returns us to the old bargaining with a new vocabulary, let us be exact about the way we enter this grace and keep it before us. We are not going to project, we are going to realize, we are not going to outline, we are going to be still. We are not going to ask God to fix. We are going to let God be God where fixing seemed required. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. How? First, set the space. Go off alone. Shut the door. Put the clock out of sight if it teases you. Be willing, in the beginning, to remain 2, 3, even 4 hours, yes, that long, to let the mind discover that it has come to the end of its assignment and may go off duty. We are not punishing the mind. We are relieving it. Under law, it was a foreman. Under grace, it becomes a doorkeeper who opens and then sits quietly. When you enter that room, bring the problem once, like a letter you place on the table between you and God, not to be read aloud in every voice you possess, not to be annotated with red pencil, but to be acknowledged and retired. If it helps you to think through the letter for a few minutes, do so intelligently and once state the principle, not as a spell but as sanity. God is. Beside him there is none else. I recognize no power apart from God, not disease power, not lack power, not personality power, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Then, Having said what truth there is to say, stop. No more mentation. The beginning of the next demonstrable power will come where conscious thinking leaves off. Do not be alarmed when the mind clears its throat and returns with a fresh stack of papers variations on the same plea. Yes, but have you considered? Respect it with one nod and let it sit. We are not fighting thoughts. We are outlasting them. We are not visualizing a changed condition. We are refusing to project any condition at all. Every picture is a bid to re-enter law. Grace wants no pictures. Grace is presence, and presence needs no storyboard. Be still and know that I am God. This is our only assignment. As you abide, a different atmosphere makes itself known. It is subtle at first, a soft lift, a warmth behind the sternum, a quiet tingling at the hands, a sense of aliveness with no object. Do not grab at it, do not narrate it. Simply consent. This is not your doing. You are not producing a feeling to persuade God. This is the temple bell answering the silence. Stay very still. Breathe by accident. Let the body remember it has been carried all its days. When thinking stops, real power begins, not emptiness, not hypnosis, but a living hush that has its own soundless tone. And then, without your doing, something happens. You will not always know what. You will only know that the fact, which seemed urgent, has lost its center of gravity. Often you will discover later that the outer form has consented to the inner truth, like ice that never announces the moment it becomes water. Now, some of you, out of long training, will want to peek at the clock or test the temperature of the atmosphere by saying, is it working? That is projection smuggled in a lab coat. Send it home. We are not examining God. We are consenting to God. I have sat 2 hours and found no fireworks, only a faithful ordinariness. And that very afternoon, the phone rang with the adjustment that the mind would have called a miracle. On other days, the room itself seems to breathe, and laughter rises for no reason I can explain. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. You may not hear the renewing, you will live it. Do not keep all of your communion in a single morning chamber. Return often. Shorter touches throughout the day season the whole loaf. 1 minute at the kitchen sink, hands in the suds, and a quiet I am without syllables. A pause before you answer the ringing phone, not to choose words, but to feel presence place you in the call. A stillness at a red light. I recommend you keep your eyes open. We do not want grace to introduce you to your bumper where you notice the breath coming and going without your escort. Pray without ceasing does not mean mutter endlessly. It means be ready, and readiness ripens by these touches. You will find, as this practice matures, that the stillness is accessible more quickly, not because you have improved at silence, but because the mind trusts the arrangement and stops jingling its keys at the door. Let me offer a rhythm. In the morning, go off and stay as long as love holds you, 20 minutes or 2 hours. The length is not a law, it is a courtesy. Bring the letter once. State the principle once. Then be still. At noon, pause for a minute or 3 and let the earlier hush find you. In the evening, before you close your eyes, touch again, not to summarize the day, but to release it. You are not adding points to a spiritual ledger. You are keeping company. The Master said, "Lo, I am with you always," and we are only discovering how often always is. Now, a word about helps. Reading and hearing can be a true bridge from thought to no thought if you use them as a servant, not a substitute. A page from Scripture, a psalm that knows its way in the dark. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Or thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Read slowly until the words begin to ring instead of clatter. Then stop. Close the book. Do not go on to chapter 2. Let the ring fill the room. Or, if you will, listen to a recording. Some of you know my strange confession. This electronic work seems to catch everything, even the consciousness behind it, so that you do not merely get words on tape, but you catch the consciousness as well. It is why, in our little fellowship, the combination of reading and hearing has proven to be more effective than either one alone. You can re-enter the class atmosphere, the felt hush of our shared work, without leaving your chair. But listen and then turn it off. Do not let my voice become your lullaby. The purpose is to be delivered into the silence which has no human voice. There, the authority is not a teacher's sentences. It is the I within you. The kingdom of God is within you. If the recording quiets the mental weather so that the sun can be felt, it has served. If it keeps you at the window admiring the forecast, it has become an idol. We will have no idols, even charming ones. Keep your practice free from projection. Never enter the room to secure a result. Enter to surrender a universe of results. If an image arises, your relative well, the bank account smiling, the phone call apologizing, let it be a bird that lands and lifts. We are not hawk keepers, we are sky. You will discover, to your mild and holy astonishment, that where you have ceased trying, provision, adjustment, healing appear as added things, as inevitable fruit on a tree you did not strain to bear. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. The seeking is the stillness. The adding is God's unhurried way. Mind is in power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. And truth, realized, does its own proving. Sit quietly then. Stop thinking. No. Let the felt presence announce itself like dawn. No one sees the switch thrown, yet the room is day. Return often until the day remains. And when the old urge to arrange returns, and it will not smile, and do the simplest thing in the world, watch and refuse to help. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Now, because power without character is only another form of law, and law always exacts a toll, we must speak plainly of conduct. I say to you after my years of work, never try to demonstrate even a parking space. Never try to engineer supply. Never turn the warm face of your affection into a tool to sway a person. Grace forbids manipulation. Why? Because love seeks not her own. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And wherever liberty is absent, where a thing or a person is arranged by our thought, spirit has been dismissed and law has been invited back to run the house. We will not have it. We are not magicians. We are witnesses. You will no more be guilty of trying to demonstrate supply than you would of stealing it. Hear that again, so softly it can set you free. You will no more be guilty of trying to demonstrate supply than you would of stealing it. For to try to get a thing by the leverage of mind is to confess a giver you do not trust, and that is theft from your own soul. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. If it is the Father's good pleasure to give, our pleasure is to receive, not to pry. When presence is realized, supply is the fruit of the tree you did not plant and have not watered with your worry. Let the orchard be the orchard. Do not climb at night to tie fruit on the limbs and call it demonstration. Some of you smile because you know my fond warning about parking spaces. You can picture the spot. You can bless the spot. You can put your name on the spot with 3 exclamation points, and the dear man 2 cars behind you, who has practiced longer at this tiny sorcery, will glide into it before your blinker clicks. And then you will discover the oldest law of mental manipulation. If you push effects around, effects push back. I had a student once who visualized the airline ticket that would place a young man conveniently next to her. She saw the seat number. She affirmed the timing. When she boarded, the seat was indeed occupied by a retired professor who had been praying for a quiet flight and who spent 3 hours telling her about the history of Roman aqueducts. She wrote me that night with a laugh and a blush. She had obtained an outcome by law, and law added a footnote. And yes, you remember the luggage picture, it moving more quickly down, and the bag will likely land on the person ahead. It is comic in little stories. It is tragic when we make a life of it. Let this be plain. Stop projecting at people. Love does not control. Love beholds. Love releases all to God. If there is someone whose apology you hunger for, do not send thoughts like little bailiffs to fetch it. If there is an employer whose decision touches your livelihood, do not sit in your chair and move his hand to your file. If there is a child away from home, do not clutch the miles with anxious affirmations. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Our work is to realize the presence of God where every person already and forever lives, and to let that presence interpret itself as harmony. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Not the Father that dwelleth in your neighbor after you have whispered suggestions into his ear. God needs no prompter. Why are we so insistent here? Because the soul must learn the difference between blessing and bargaining. Under law, you bless as a means to an end. You say a prayer in exchange for a result. Under grace, blessing is your nature. You behold the Christ in all because Christ is all. You do not bless the merchant to get a discount. You bless because in that beholding, the one life in you greets the one life in him, and commerce becomes sacrament. If a discount appears, rejoice. If it does not, rejoice. The kingdom did not change. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. The adding belongs to God. Your part is the seeking, which is stillness, the beholding, which is love, the releasing, which is trust. There is, too, a holy protection in these ethics. When you refuse to use mind as a crowbar on circumstance or person, you are spared the reciprocal judgments that law always carries in its pockets. Judge not, that ye be not judged. The moment you project upon another even sweetness with a hook, you have stepped into a courtroom where another voice may project back upon you. We decline the courtroom. We remain in the sanctuary where each one is free to be God's, and where the only influence is the fragrance of realized presence. You will find, with the practice of non-projection, that people relax around you. Animals, too. Children, especially. They feel the absence of your agenda as surely as the body feels the absence of gravity in deep water. Perfect love casteth out fear. Let perfect love in you cast out the fear that you must arrange anything or anyone. Now, do not say, but if I do not take hold, how will right action appear? It will appear as the effortless alignment that follows realization, and it will be clean of residue. A call will come or will not. A door will open, or the wall you leaned on will become a gate beneath your hand. The difference is not in the outer picture. It is in the absence of fingerprints. Where grace acts, no one stands indicted. Where grace gives, no one stands depleted. Where grace guides, no one stands coerced. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Mind is in power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. Therefore, our conduct is shaped by this simple vow. We will not manipulate. We will behold. We will release. We will let God be God in all. If you forget and reach for the old levers, we have all done it. Catch yourself with a smile. Put your hands in your lap and softly remember, lo, I am with you always. Then sit a while until the presence once again fills the room without sound. And when you rise to meet the day, you will find that life, relieved of your pushing, has consented to be what it is. Grace everywhere for all. You have heard me speak of ethics, and some of you, with that honest practicality that I love, whisper inwardly, yes, but does it work? I say to you, after my years of work, by their fruits ye shall know them. The record, kept not in notebooks but in lives, says quietly and stubbornly that where manipulation ceased, grace did the work, healing in the flesh, provision in the market, adjustments that bewilder the arithmetic of law. We did not push minds around. We did not visualize outcomes. We realized the presence, and the presence fulfilled. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. When grace appears, effects consent without being coerced. Take this as one stone in the cairn. A young woman with tuberculosis was brought to my attention. The family, in their fear, hoped I would come and speak strong thoughts over her, drive the darkness back by a brighter beam. We would not do it. We do not hammer at the patient's mind. We do not add our noise to her struggle. I went apart. I sat 2 hours, yes, with a whole parade of medical words marching by, with the old superstition of a power apart from God knocking as if it were landlord to the body. I thought through what there was to think. God is. Beside him, there is none else. There are not two powers. There is one. And then I stopped. I waited. When thinking stopped, the place there was a soft loosening, the room breathing, a small warmth in the hands, a living hush. And the sentence within that has no words except I am. I did not send a thought to her. I did not picture pink lungs. I simply abided until the presence was more real than breath. That evening, her fever broke. Over the next days, the cough unraveled like a rope left in rain. Weeks later, the physician, who was an honest man, said, something has intervened. Yes, Grace. He sent his word and healed them. Not a suggestion, not a mental pressure, but the word that his presence realized. On 4 occasions, let me be so specific that you may trust me, I have witnessed the complete disappearance of venereal disease, and always in the same manner. No condemnation. Neither do I condemn thee first. No arguments over conduct. We leave the courtroom of reciprocity. We name no culprit but the ancient claim of a life separate from God. Then we go apart. We sit until the wind of thought tires itself. We realize the Christ as the only life present, the only identity, the only law where law is now love. In each case, there was that interior sign known to every contemplative, the stillness that has finished speaking. And then, outwardly, the evidence followed. Tests cleared. Symptoms retired like embarrassed actors, leaving a stage that no longer hosts their play. Not a single thought was sent to change a person's mind or body. Not once did we perform surgery with syllables. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Now, about supply. I have never succeeded in demonstrating money, and I am, to my quiet joy, a complete failure at it. When supply has appeared, and it has appeared unfailingly enough to keep this work at liberty, it has come because presence was realized, and the needs of the day were met, as dew meets the grass, not as a safe yields to a stethoscope. A small publisher called one morning paper bill due. 3 days, no cushion. He asked me to treat that $600. We would not treat 600 of anything. We sat. We acknowledged that there is one life expressing, one activity unfolding, one love maintaining its own. We reminded ourselves once, not God, that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and then we stopped. That afternoon, a bookstore chain telephoned with an order they had delayed for months, bigger by half than the bill, and, in a fit of their own housekeeping, mailed a check by special post. Nobody was nudged. No merchant was pictured with pen in hand. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. We did the seeking, which is the stillness. God did the adding, which is the grace. Another time, a widow with 2 children sat in my living room with that look we all know, sums that will not stretch, rent in 5 days. Her mind had been killing itself with little demonstrations. A coin here, a discount there, a parking space. We never learn until we do. We would not do it. We went into the silence together. No appeal to a landlord. No imagining envelopes. Only the announcement of God here and the breathless consent to let that be enough. The next day, an old employer, who by no calculation should have remembered, sent a note. Accounting had discovered an error in final pay. A check enclosed 2 months' rent and a kind line about her years of work. The landlord, who had been tightening his belt and his heart, telephoned the same day to say he would fix a leaky window and to apologize for his tone the week before. Grace mended more than numbers. It washed the atmosphere. Where grace acts, no one stands indicted and no one stands depleted. Through the years, the pattern has repeated with the faithfulness of sunrise. First, the debate ends, not prematurely, not by force, but by reverent exhaustion. Then a presence becomes the fact of the room, not felt always as heat, sometimes simply as the relief of having no more to say. After that, an hour later, a day later, on the kitchen clock's schedule or not at all, according to it, the outward picture consents to the inward fact. The child sleeps. The lab report softens. The needed tool arrives. The quarrel forgets why it was so beloved. We never know how. We only know who. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Do not mistake me. We do our human duties. We answer letters. We pay bills. We keep appointments. But we do not lean on outcomes. We lean into presence. And leaning thus, we find that life has a way of answering before we call. And while we are yet speaking, it has heard. If humor helps you remember, then let it smile in you this way. Grace does not check with the kitchen clock, yet heaven keeps excellent appointments. The letter arrives when the kettle sings. The doorbell rings between your first and second slice of toast, and you will be forgiven for laughing because you know, in that moment, you did nothing but keep company with God. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. And truth, realized, proves itself by retiring the ledger and opening the storehouse, by quieting the fever and reconciling the account. I do not ask you to believe a theory. I offer you a record, lived in many rooms with many names, and one refrain. When we cease manipulating, grace reliably does the healing and the providing. Now let us allow the friendly cross-examination that always rises when the heart is honest. But surely, you say, surely, right thinking must be required? Yes and no. Right thinking may bring you to the threshold. It may escort you down the corridor and pull the chair out for you. But right thinking cannot do the work. It is not the surgeon. It is the usher. The work is grace. The moment you have thought the truth through to the end of its utility, stop. When thinking stops, real power begins. Mind isn't power. Spirit is power. Soul is power. Consciousness is power. Truth is power. And truth, realized, does its own proving. Be still and know that I am God. Do not be still to make God. Be still to let God be God without your fine assistance. But if I do not keep my thought right, won't bad thinking spoil the demonstration? It isn't your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble. It is being born under the law, under cause and effect, reward and penalty, and then trying to manage that law with better thoughts. You cannot out Moses. The law came by Moses. Grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. We do not change one law for another as if we were trading statutes at market. We annihilate the whole claim of law as a power apart from God. And in that annihilating, grace appears as fulfillment. So use right thinking as you would a walking stick on the path. But when you reach the garden, put it down. You are not crossing a desert. You are entering a presence. Very well, another voice says. But what of visualizing for someone's good? Surely love may picture harmony for a child, sobriety for a husband, healing for a friend. Love never overrules freedom. Love seeketh not her own. Love does not turn its tenderness into a bridle. When you visualize for another, you stand in the old courtroom with the old briefs, and no matter how kindly the cause, law is still the judge. Under grace, we do not handle people. We behold the Christ that is their very life, and we release them to God. Judge not, that ye be not judged. The moment you project a picture, even a sweet one, you invite an answering projection. End the courtroom. Remain in the sanctuary. You will find that, beheld in Christ, people change as the weather changes under a new season without your hands arranging clouds. And what of affirmations? I like affirmations as I like a bell that calls me to prayer once. Say the truth as you would ring that bell, clear, sufficient, and not every 2 minutes. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Good. Now stop and let the shepherd be the shepherd. Affirmations are not incantations to bend law. They are gentle reminders to be still. Use them to recall your wandering attention to the presence that already is. If you string them like beads hoping to purchase an outcome, you have returned to bargaining. Under grace, there is nothing to buy. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. If it is his good pleasure to give, it must be our good pleasure to receive in silence. Is grace passive? No. Grace is the only activity. What you call your activity, your mental pushing, Your industrious picturing is the true passivity because it accomplishes nothing but rearrangements within law. Sit very still someday and watch in the hush where you have nothing to say. You will feel a livingness begin to move, of itself a sobriety without moralizing, a mending without argument, a provision without arithmetic. My Father worketh hitherto, and I work. How do we work? By consenting to be the transparency for the Father's work. Our stillness is not a resignation, it is cooperation. It is the removal of our hand from the wheel, so the car may go where the road goes. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Spirit is not idle. It is infinite activity unopposed. But what if nothing happens? Then nothing has happened to your timetable, not to God. Time belongs to law. Fulfillment belongs to grace. Persist not in chattering, not in testing, but in realization. Wait upon the Lord until the waiting itself dissolves into the awareness that there is no waiting, only God. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Do not keep glancing at the kitchen clock to see if heaven has learned punctuality. Let that clock keep its own commandments. You keep yours. Be still. Consent. Watch. You may discover, as so many have, that while you were evaluating results, the result had already arrived and was standing at the door, knocking in a tone you could not hear over your counting. Another objection walks in with a briefcase, wearing spectacles. But is it not irresponsible to refrain from directing the mind when a crisis strikes? Shouldn't we take hold? You will learn that the instant you take hold, you lose hold of the only thing worth holding, the presence. In crisis, go faster to stillness, not emptiness, not coma, a taut, alert, hush. Think to the end of thought you can do it in minutes. When the habit has formed, state the principle once, and then let the greater activity act. Often the phone will ring while you are yet speaking, or the inner alarm will settle, and with it you will know the right human step. Call the doctor, or call the neighbor, or ring the bell downstairs. The difference is this: the step will be free of fear and therefore clean. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Ordered, not shoved. But won't people take advantage if we stop using mind to secure our part? Only if you live in a universe of parts. In a kingdom, the king keeps his own. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. As you abide in realization, you will see that what looked like vulnerability under law is invulnerability under grace. Invitations come, entanglements do not. Commerce proceeds, covetousness does not. You find, strangely, that the very ones you thought might press upon you relax in your presence, because you are not pressing upon them. And finally, the question that hides behind the others: how shall I know if I am yielding or merely being lazy? Laziness fears to sit in silence because it suspects it will be asked to rise in love. Yielding sits and rises at the same pace, gods. After the hush, there will be what there always is where life is present, a next rightness. It may be to write a letter. It may be to wash a dish. It may be to make a plan or to let a plan expire. You will know it by its yoke, easy. Its burden, light. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Where there is strain, law is peeking in. Where there is grace, you will smile for no good reason and go about your business as one who knows who is doing the business. So let every objection take its lap, and then let it sit quietly among the rest. When the actor is grace, not mind, the questions become what they always were. Smoke after a fire has burned out. Our part is to yield thought to silence, yield persons to God, yield time to eternity, yield effort to love. And in that yielding, life does what it has always done, unobserved until we observe it. It fulfills itself. Lo, I am with you always. Always is a long word. Let it be long in you. And now we go to our houses, to our desks and kitchens, to buses and boardrooms and back stairwells. How shall we live this? Not as a trick, not as a performance, but as a rhythm, a breathing that belongs to grace. This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Let the day begin not with the weight of its hours, but with the weightlessness of his presence. Before your feet touch the floor, give 3 minutes, only 3, to silence, not to ask, to acknowledge. One clear bell, then quiet. God is. Beside him, there is none else. The law of cause and effect is not power. Grace is the only cause, the only effect. Say it once as a doorbell rings you into the house, and then let the house receive you. Sit without bargaining. Listen without listening for anything. When thinking stops even for 30 seconds, you will know that the day has already been ordered. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done. That is enough for breakfast. Carry that small hush with you. It will fit in a pocket. Midday, when the hands have grown loud and the voices around you are writing their contracts with law, step aside outwardly or inwardly for a minute that belongs to nobody. Close your office door, or close the door of the heart where no one can enter but God. Breathe once with the knowledge, not the hope, that in him we live and move and have our being. Then let the knowledge be the last word. No affirmations strung like laundry on a windy day. One chord, then rest. You will discover that the minute you spend in consent saves you hours you used to spend in cleverness. It is what Paul meant in his plain phrase, pray without ceasing. Not words without ceasing, communion without breakage. A touch upon the hem at noon steadies the whole garment of the afternoon. At evening, learn to lay it all upon the altar. Do not carry people into your sleep like unmailed letters. Return them to God. Do not take your own successes or failures to bed as trophies or indictments. Return them to God. Sit again, not to review the day, but to release it as a child releases a toy to run at the call of supper. He that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. If God remains awake, you may be permitted your rest. Whisper once, into thy hands I commend my spirit, and then do not take it back with errands. The sleep that follows an evening surrender is the body's sermon. It preaches quietly to every cell that law is over, grace is here. In relationship, let our ethic become our ease. Do not script your wife. Do not draft your husband. Do not send little scouts of thought to bring your child home with a promise. Behold the Christ where they are and release them to God. And watch a unity appear without pressure. Love suffereth long and is kind. Love seeketh not her own. Let that be more than a verse on a card. Let it be the atmosphere of your breakfast table. You will see apologies arrive like dew, not like subpoenas. You will watch decisions ripen as fruit on branches you did not prune. Where grace acts, no one stands coerced. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. Not the kind of love that leans, but the kind that beholds and blesses and sets free. In business and supply, come up higher, and once you are there, you will not be tempted to come down again. Rise out of the market of parts into the household of God. and you will never again know the word competition. Do you hear? You will never again know the word competition. There is no rival in omnipresence. There is no scarcity in infinity. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Conduct your affairs as one, trading within the family, and every invoice becomes a sacrament of circulation. Bless the man across the street who sells what you sell. Send him your overflow when you have more calls than you can answer. It will not diminish you. Under law, that sentence is nonsense. Under grace, it is common sense. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together, and running over. Running over is the household's way of saying there is no edge at which good stops. If a contract slips away, bless it on its journey, and watch another door open in a wall you did not know was a door. I must be about my Father's business. Be about it, not yours. The Father's business is distribution without depletion. In health, be done with the autopsies of conscience. It isn't your wrong thinking that is getting you in trouble. We were born under the law, not under grace. And under law, the body is a clerk tallying the rumors of fear. Do not blame the clerk, change the government. When a symptom calls, answer the caller, not the call. Treat the universal claim that there is a power apart from God, fear of decay, fear of age, fear of accident, and treat it as no power, no law, no person. Then rest until presence becomes fact. I am the Lord that healeth thee. Let I am be the last word in the room. You may be led to wash a dish, or take a walk, or call a physician. And if you are, go gladly. The step will be free of fear, and therefore clean. You will find, often with a smile, you did not order that vitality returns while you were not looking for it on the clock, because you were not bargaining with minutes, but consenting to life. Who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles? Renewal is God's habit. Your habit is to be still and to receive it. If you keep the simple rhythm, a morning bell of acknowledgement, a noon touch, an evening releasing, you will notice a pattern that repeats with holy mischief. Things arrange themselves. Conversations happened at the corner where you did not intend to turn. A piece that was missing in your work will present itself while you are buttering toast. Someone you were about to pursue writes first, in gentler ink than you could have chosen. And when it does not happen at your convenience, it will happen at God's, which is not late, not early, but perfectly itself. Before they call, I will answer. And while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Heaven keeps excellent appointments. So let us finish where we began. Stop projecting. Stop arranging effects under law. Realize God, and then watch. Watch the infinite invisible. Arrange the scene without your hands on the levers. Watch relationships stand up straight because you have removed your strings. Watch business become a current instead of a contest. Watch health resume its place as the natural radiation of life. Live by communion, not control. Let grace be the actor and yourself the transparency. Be still and know that I am God. Know it in the morning, touch it at noon, lay your head upon it at night. And in the unspectacular holiness of your days, you will hear the refrain that never grows old. Lo, I am with you always, and always will belong in you.